With us right now, kicking off today's show, is a man I've admired his work. He is a comic actor, a kind of an emerging, I think, as a romantic clown, if you will. Some of his legacy in films includes the films Bonnie and Clyde, The Producers, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. He was the Waco Kid. Remember the Waco Kid in Blazing Saddles? He wrote, directed, and starred in Sherlock Holmes' Smarter Brother, and he's currently here to tell us a little bit about his new film, Silver Streak. I would like all the people scattered around our giant studio today in one to unite in applaud for Mr. Gene Wilder. Here he is. Have a seat. Well, let's set the record straight, Gene. You're not a comedian, right?
No. I used to want to be a comedian.
You did?
Mm-hmm. When I was growing up, I heard Danny Kaye on a record before I ever saw him, before Up in Arms, and I thought that's what I'd like to do. Then I saw Up in Arms. But then, when I was in junior high school, I started to, my idol then was Sid Caesar. Unbeknownst, well, I didn't realize that Mel Brooks was writing most of the material, so I got to know Mel before I even knew him. But then I saw Lee J. Cobb in Death of a Salesman on Broadway. And I realized that he was doing something different from what I had thought I wanted to do, which was acting.
Straight, heavy, dramatic acting.
It didn't mean that I didn't want to be in comedy, but I wanted to approach it in a different way, through character, instead of just stepping on banana peels and making funnies.
I have read that the fact that your mother, sadly, was an invalid, and you kind of, as a young boy, put yourself in an entertaining posture of trying to make your mother happy and laugh, really had a big influence on you, that you were in the posture of being funny, getting laughs, and that's kind of continued for most of your life.
Well, I think that what most of us are encouraged in when we're very young probably makes the most lasting impression. I don't think that you want to sing just because you say, I want to sing. Somebody must have said, oh, what a good singer you are, when you're 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 8 or... I wanted to make my mother laugh because she was ill, and she did laugh. I think if she hadn't laughed, I wouldn't be sitting here now with you.
Yeah, it's reinforced from our earliest time.
Sounds simple, but I believe it.
No, and I think that probably as you went through life, just according to a little bit that I've learned about you, you probably use humor in a very creative and sometimes defensive way.
That's right.
Like, for example, you went to a military academy.
Oh, you know about that.
Yes, you went to a military academy where this man was the only Jewish boy at the military academy. Now, you were subject to being occasionally ridiculed and beaten up.
Yeah, it was the last days of what was hardcore anti-Semitism. And in a military surrounding, it wasn't much fun. But I was sort of chubby, and I was the only Jew there. And I slowly won them over. They got around to just punching me in the arms instead of...
Going right for the head and the face. But so humor, you could use humor like that. How about today, in your personal life? Is it important that when you meet people, that, particularly ones who count, like you say women or whatever, that you make a comedic connection early and that they appreciate you and your sense of humor? Does that have to be validated before your relationship with somebody can go anywhere?
Who wrote that question out for you?
Just came flowing out of the...
It's a very good question.
Thank you.
I think I would guess that every time that I'm seriously thinking of connecting with a woman, if I don't reach her on a comedy level, there's no chance of it continuing.
Yeah.
I believe that. I mean, that's what I would use instead of hello, how are you, or coming on. I'm not going to be... I wanted to be Errol Flynn and Clark Gable and Tyrone Power. I realized, I think it was about 6 or 7 months ago, that I'm not going to make it that way.
When was the exact moment that it hit you?
About 3:20 in the afternoon. It was Thursday and it was raining.
Driving along the LA
freeway. I said,
freeway.
no, it's not going to happen, so give up the ghost.
You're making a new film based on The World's Greatest Lover, are you not?
Yes, I am.
Are you going to be he, the world's greatest lover?
Bet your boots I am.
So who says you're not doing it like Errol Flynn?
Because I'm producing and directing and writing it, I can say it.
I think that's good. Now, I think the concept of producing, directing, and writing, like you did in Sherlock Holmes' Smarter Brother, has got...
I didn't produce that one.
No, but you wrote, directed,
yeah,
and starred in the film. That has to be the most rewarding of all experiences in working in film, I think.
Well, I started to write really because I wanted parts that weren't going to be written for me unless I did.
Like what? You mean really those loony, crazy parts
like
where you could use
Frankenstein.
that face of yours? And...
Like Young Frankenstein. I wanted to be Basil Rathbone well, some of the names that the audience I don't think would remember, but...
Test them. They have good memories.
what was his name? Colin Clive.
Yeah.
And the director of most of those Frankenstein films was James Whale. And I said, oh, if I could just be, and I'd say, oh, hang it, man, and things like that.
Oh,
you know,
hang it,
yes,
man.
but I said,
what are you doing with yourself?
You can't talk like that today. No. And I thought, but what if I was the great-grandson? And I took a train back to Transylvania, and it was just the way it was. Then I could say all those things and do all those things. I didn't know then that Mel Brooks would be directing it, but that just made it all the better.
Yeah. If you could have lived, this is purely hypothetical, in any other time at all in history, when might you have enjoyed walking the earth?
I think when the Impressionists were painting, I think in the late 1800s in Paris.
You have a strong identification with that?
I do. I have very strong. I don't believe in reincarnation, but if it turns out that it's so, I think I must have been alive then. I have such a strong feeling. But I think it's best that I'm alive now because, you know, 10 years ago I wouldn't be able to play the leading role in a movie. It's only what's happened after Dustin Hoffman did The Graduate and Alan Arkin broke through that they said you don't have to look like Rock Hudson in order to play a leading role.
But you know, the thing is, I think that everybody sitting here today looks at you as a good-looking man. You know, I think that you have inside of you somebody who's
called mass hypnotism.
All right.